All right. Good morning, everyone. This is Wednesday, so our second meeting of the week for junior studies. We're on week 2. Yesterday, we went over the first assignment in week 2, which was the Your Tracks assignment. And so I'll quickly go over that, and then we'll spend a little bit more time this morning going over the confirmation bias assignment. And then you'll have time to work during our session. And if you have questions, and you can ask and things like that. If you're watching this as a playback, then feel free to come to small group on Mondays or Fridays from 9 to 11. Code is on the homepage if you need that additional assistance or any assistance outside of class. Okay. All right. So let's jump in. You're going to need Canvas open. All right. And I did want to show you just really quick. I made a post. Open house is in 2 weeks, or it was 2 weeks from yesterday. All right. It's Tuesday, the 29th. Oh, that should not say AM. That should say PM. Whoops. Whoops. I'll have to go make sure I didn't do that in all the sections. Okay, sorry about that. All right, it is Tuesday the 29th at 5:30 p.m. All right, the schedule is as follows. There's like a general information meeting, and this is the link, and it's about a half hour with the principal and kind of getting general information about NBLA, and then you go period by period. So if your parent or guardian wants to meet the teachers, and get a little bit of information about all your classes, then they're going to follow your schedule, and then they're going to follow those meet codes. So for example, period 1, right, we're NBLA K Hall 1. So whatever your period 2 code, and you're going to want them to go through your account, because then that way they'll be admitted into the Google Meets. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions on that. It is virtual. All right. So it's online and stuff. And obviously it's optional, but it's a great way to, meet the teachers real quick, or if you have a quick question, it's a good way to do that. Okay. Let's go to modules. Okay. Again, reminders that all playbacks and things I do are posted right here in the lesson and recording. All right. So I posted yesterday's class in there, and then I'll post today's recording in there as well. And then it also gives the outline of what's due for the week, what was due last week. So if you have a hard time keeping track of things, this is a great way to go back and keep track. So we did week 1. That was the intro module. Okay. Yesterday we talked about the 2 assignments. We looked at future tracks. So I'm just going to quickly review this assignment, and then we will give you time to work. Okay, I'll go over both assignments. So we watched this video on Is Social Media Making You Sick? About those 10 people, right, who had their offers withdrawn or rescinded from Harvard because of their negative social media posts and presence. Okay. And just kind of a good thought process of the things that we are doing now, how will they impact us in the future when we're applying for jobs or scholarships or admissions into programs or schools or internships. And the things we do, positive and negative, can open up opportunities or limit those opportunities. So how we want to be conscious of that and really careful. Okay, we went to the next page. We opened up the Your Tracks handout. And I'm just going to quickly do this because we did go over this in more detail. So if you want a slower version of this, then please go and watch yesterday's playback. Okay, Tuesday's playback for this week. So you open it, remember, rename, save it to your Google Drive, make it shareable. I went over all that in the video. Okay, you're going to pick 2 resources, all right, from this list of 4. As you watch, read, or listen to them, you put the resource number. You're doing at least a couple points. I'd say 3 different points, at least 3 to 4. How can your digital footprint affect your future or affect your future opportunities? So positive or negative ways that your footprint can affect based on the resource you're listening to. Then you answer the question, do you agree with this message? Why or why not? So from that source. So you pick 2, okay, fill out the chart, skip this blank page, and then you go to part 2, which is you read the vignette, haunted picture. Okay, so the link is there. All right. And think about how it shows the impact in someone's digital footprint can have for future opportunities. So we're kind of taking a positive twist. Then what you're going to do, and I want to see at least 1 paragraph minimum, so that would be 5 sentences. All right. After reading the vignette, you're going to brainstorm your own vignette. So story, situation about someone's digital footprint. This can be fiction or nonfiction. So it could be true, untrue. It could be something you've done, something you've thought about doing, something that somebody else has done, or just totally made up. Okay. And what you want to make sure you do is in your description, what did the person post or do online that showed positive footprint? what opportunity was that affected by their footprint, and how was the opportunity affected positively by the person's footprint. So I gave you the example of like the fires in Maui, and that's a place like me and my family go every year in those places. So, you know, maybe if someone set up like a GoFundMe or something like that to help, I have a couple friends there, so helping maybe set that up or contributing to those. And then maybe down the road, if I was applying for something, then someone could see how I've been active. If I was doing maybe something to help with community outreach or something, like I could show that in this crisis or something like that, that I had assisted or helped online with a positive digital footprint toward, you know, someone who is struggling. Just an example, okay? There's lots of different ways that this could, and stuff. So it can be true, untrue, okay? But try to think of a realistic situation, all right? Any questions on that? I know that was fast, but I just wanted to make sure we're good. Okay. So again, we gave time in class yesterday to work on this. So when I'm done going over instructions, then I would encourage you just to keep working on this, finish this up, then do the second one. Let's go over the second one. Okay. So we're going to go back into Canvas. Once you're done, you're going to submit it here. Again, make sure that that Google Doc is worksheet is shareable. So the next one is confirmation bias. You might be going, what in the world is confirmation bias? So in this one, we will learn about your brain, and is great at using past experiences to make quick decisions on the fly. But these shortcuts can also lead to bias. Confirmation bias is your brain's tendency to seek out information that confirms things you already think you know. So you'll learn to recognize, so if you tend to lean one way or another on a topic and you see a headline, you might be drawn toward that. You might believe it maybe without vetting the information. It's stuff is kind of what it's putting at. So for example, like if you saw these three headlines, are they fake or are they real? Japan finally abandons microwave ovens by 2020. New iPhones will come with a holographic keyboard and projector. Australia to introduce 33 different genders on passports. Okay, so if you had to guess which one was real or fake, think about it for a second. All right, did you guess two, which sounds most realistic? To be honest, all three of these headlines are actually false, but number two sounds the most true because it fits best within what we already know. iPhones often include the latest technology. Our brains will assume it must be real. In actuality, you go through what's called confirmation bias. So what we tend to know, or what tends to be familiar to us already, if it's kind of the next step of something we already know, we tend to just kind of believe it or not do as much of a vetting process, okay? So what could it take to change your mind about something that you really believed, okay? And stuff. So we're gonna watch, so they give you the option that you could set up notes if you want, okay, to help you and stuff. So they say to open up a Google Doc. So if you want to do that, all right, let's go over here. And you would go to your drive, you're gonna click on Doc. New document. Now it says you're going to title it confirmation bias. All right, so let's do that. Confirmation bias. And since this is our title, I'll put it in the middle. Might bold it, make it a little bigger. Okay. Add the question below the title. What does confirmation bias make, or why does confirmation bias make us more likely to be fooled by fake news? Okay, which fake news, I kind of hate the term fake news. I think we overuse that a little bit, like when we don't like something, we're like, oh, fake news is like that. But there are articles out there that are just, they're false, or they misuse information. And both sides of the aisle are responsible for this, okay, the left and the right, you know, so this is not a jab at any one party because both sides do it. Okay, so I'm going to copy and paste that here, and I can put that in the chat for you. Okay, what does confirmation bias make us more likely, or why does confirmation bias make us more likely to be fooled by fake news or news that is not true? A lot of times there's partial truths it's a misuse of information or incomplete information. So that's often what you'll see when something is misguiding or kind of leads us down the wrong path, you know, especially if it's something we already tend to believe, if it's something we're already passionate about, or the news leans toward something that we already personally believe or embrace, okay? We'll tend to do that. So our confirmation bias, unfortunately, gets worse when that happens, okay? So we're going to listen to the video and we'll stop throughout and maybe do some bullet points, all right? So let's watch this video together and then I'll go over the worksheet that you need to do. So this is 5 minutes. We'll watch it together. All right. So have your document. You could take a few notes if you want. This is optional. Okay. So you aren't required to do the notes. So this is, you won't be turning these in, but it is, if you want to take a few notes on the video, you can do that. Okay. All right. So here we go.
Hey, come here. Did you know that RuPaul claims that Trump touched him inappropriately in the 90s? Or that Obama signed an executive order banning the Pledge of Allegiance in schools nationwide? Okay, we all know that that was some grade A, top shelf, premium fake news. But you knew that, right? You're way too smart and well informed to fall for that BS. But what if falling for fake news isn't about intelligence or how much information you have? What if we're hardwired to believe what we want to believe, regardless of the facts? The 2016 presidential election saw fake news come out of nowhere. A BuzzFeed analysis showed that the top 20 fake news articles on Facebook generated more clicks than the top 20 real articles from every major publication combined. They were shared millions of times. And it's not that we're just sharing fake news, we appear to be believing the stories too. A recent poll found that people believe fake news articles were somewhat or very accurate 75% of the time. How can we be falling for fake news when we have these things? We have instant access to more information than we've ever had before. Debunking misinformation should be a piece of cake, right? Decades of brain research say, no. Turns out, our brains have other plans. A little something called cognitive bias. Cognitive bias is defined as a limitation in our thinking that can cause flaws in our judgment. It's kind of like an annoying.
So cognitive bias is limitation in our, let me rewind that. Limitation in our thinking, because you are going to need that definition. So let me rewind it like 10 seconds, okay?
Bias is defined as a limitation in our thinking that can cause flaws in our judgment.
So limitation in our thinking that can cause flaws in our judgment. So limitation our thinking that can cause, why am I having such a hard time with this?
Cognitive bias is defined as a limitation in our thinking that can cause flaws in our
judgment. So limitation in our thinking that can cause flaws in our judgment. Right? So that's cognitive bias definition. So you're welcome to pull it there from the chat if you want. All right, I'm going to keep going.
Our judgment. It's kind of like an annoying brain glitch that can lead us to make faulty conclusions. Fake news often exploits this and our brains love it, even if we're not conscious of it happening. Once we've formed conclusions, they're hella hard to change, even if we're presented with facts or evidence that directly contradict those conclusions. So what exactly is going on in our brains to make us think that fake news is real news? Why can't facts change our minds? There are many flavors of cognitive bias, but one of the most researched is confirmation bias. We seek out information that we believe or want to believe is true. It also leads us to ignore or minimize facts that threaten what we believe. So here's a study that explains how it works. Back in 2004, during the Kerry Bush election, researchers studied a group of 30 people, half Democrat, half Republican. Both candidates did what politicians do. They flip-flopped on the issues. Then the study asked the participants to analyze what the candidates said. The participants let the candidate in their own party off the hook, but were super critical of the candidate in the other party. When researchers looked at their brain scans, they found that the area of the brain responsible for reason, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, was inactive. So people weren't using reason when evaluating the candidates they liked, but they were using the part of the brain that processes emotion, the orbital frontal cortex. a classic case of confirmation bias. And their brains were also rewarding them with the rush of dopamine, a neurotransmitter that makes you feel good. So is there any upside to confirmation bias? Well, it could help protect us from ideas that may threaten our social standing in our tribe. Dan Kahan, a law and psychology professor at Yale University, calls it identity protective cognition. We humans are hypersocial, so it's more important to protect our values in our relationships with family and friends than it is to risk losing that by adopting new beliefs. Are you familiar with Tomi Lahren? She's a conservative political commentator.
A protest is a peaceful objection to a grievance. A bunch of sore losers occupying a space is called a tantrum.
But recently, she expressed her pro-choice view on abortion.
No, I'm pro-choice, and here's why.
As a result, members of her conservative tribe turned on her. Ouch. So, how do we defeat confirmation bias? Well, you really can't, but our 3-step plan can help you get around it. Step 1 is recognize. Recognize that you have this bias in the first place. We all do. You made it this far in the video, so you can check that one off. Step 2 is consider. Consider that you may not really understand what you think you understand. Researchers call it the illusion of explanatory depth. Let's say I strongly believe that GMOs are bad for me. If someone forces me to explain it, I just might realize that I don't understand it as well as I thought I did. Now, I might be less confident in my belief and more receptive to another point of view. Step 3 is research. Research and break down the opposing viewpoint. You may realize that your understanding of where they're coming from is a bit too shallow. So now you know the perils of confirmation bias and have some tools to beat it. Let's try it out. Without being a smartass, pick a controversial topic and use step 3 on it. Don't try to persuade, but instead use research and facts to lay out why the other side believes what it believes. Put your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex to good use, will you?
I think this is actually such a great video because I think that for sure, so this has gotten worse with social media and then really divisive elections, right? We get super into this. Why I kind of put that point about like, think about politics right now. Like if you go to Fox News, right, it's all about Biden and Hunter Biden right now, right? And that whole controversy. And then if you go to CNN, it's all about Trump and his indictments, right? And we've so polarized focus on the opposite party and their illegal actions or, questionable behavior and stuff, and often don't put as much focus on our own party, whichever that is. And stuff. So it's just like one really good example that like a lot of people, get involved in. And I think we're all guilty of this on a lot of different than subtopics, right? Things that we're passionate about. Sometimes we don't know as much as we think we know. So I think it's a great recommendation he gives, is when you are passionate about a topic, one of the best ways actually to be a good debater is to understand the opposing view. So do some research on that. What is the research? Why do they believe what they believe? And be open to that of either reaffirming where you come from by being able to disprove or honestly understand the opposing view. And stuff. And it will actually then make your argument stronger or allow you to adjust your argument based on actual facts, not emotions. And that's often what happens. We get really emotional, right, about a topic or something that's super important to us. And we're not as grounded in the facts. And sometimes there are facts to the contrary, or that might weaken our position. And because of our confirmation bias, right, we're not open to it. And we get very passionate, very defensive, and very angry at the other side instead of actually hearing the other side. So I actually think this is a really good lesson that we should be learning, and stuff, especially as you are young adults, going into adulthood and stuff. We need this rationale to come back to society because the way that we currently are in this divisiveness, it can't be sustained. We have to find a way to be civil with one another. And that means getting along with people that you don't always agree with. Just because someone doesn't agree with you doesn't mean they're the enemy. Yes, exactly. Because otherwise we will be ripped apart. We will be ripped apart. And the reality is just because someone doesn't agree with you or see it that way doesn't mean they hate you, doesn't mean they want to go against you, just because they have a different view of life or life experiences. And we have to find a way, So even if you don't change your perspective going through confirmation bias, looking at things, it is a great idea to be willing to self-analyze. Why am I so defensive? Why am I? And I'm guilty of this for sure. I've had to really work on this as a teacher and really trying to make sure that I stay as unbiased as possible when I am teaching and talking about topics. I teach social studies. So to say we talk about controversial topics is an understatement. So making sure that I'm trying to come from as neutral point of view as possible when naturally we are biased, right? So constantly trying to check myself and say, okay, I can have my personal beliefs, but I got to leave that over here. And I got to make sure that I am presenting as unbiased and neutral and fair perspective as possible, which is not easy to do, right? Because we are prone toward, our personal opinions and experiences. All right, so let's go over the second one. But I do think this is really interesting and a really great thing for all of us to really work on, because if we can be better humans, believe me, people will receive us better. And I've actually had some great conversations with people that I disagree with when they were calm. I felt heard. I was willing to hear them. I didn't feel threatened, and I didn't feel like they hated me because I just didn't agree with them. And it's amazing when we can make ourselves less defensive, people are actually more willing to listen to our ideas. Okay, so we go to the next page. Okay, so we're on assignment confirmation bias overview page. All right, in this activity, we will be working on bias brain handout by reviewing another video and reading. So you're going to be doing 2, an article attached. You will take notes on these resources in your package, and then you're going to be creating a mnemonic device, all right, which is word or series of letters that help you remember steps or strategies for something. All right, it's not as complicated as it sounds. We'll go over it. Okay, so you're going to click on the handout. And once you click on the handout, oh, this is my wrong handout. Let me get to it. Okay, here it is. So once you get to the handout, okay, then remember the 3 things. You can rename it if you want. Okay, make sure you save it to your drive. So again, make sure you have that junior studies or JS folder. It just helps keep you organized. You can always add that, move here. And then we're going to make it shareable. Okay, so there in the right-hand corner, anyone with the link. Okay, give me a thumbs up once you have this open. You're ready to review this. Make sure I'm not going too fast. Awesome. Okay, so I'll go over this and then we'll give you time to work. All right, so we're almost done. Okay, so there's 2 things. So part 1, you're going to look over resources listed below. As you review, track what each says about confirmation bias and fake news. Capture your thoughts in the notes section. So you're going to watch this quick video on defining confirmation bias. There's the link, okay? And then you're going to read this article on scientists discover simple psychological tools to battle fake news. So you're going to put resource number 1 here. So you could put, defining confirmation bias, a few notes similar to what we did on the other, okay? What does this resource show about confirmation bias and fake news? So I would give maybe 3-4 notes on that. And then how can we challenge confirmation bias, especially with information we see online? So what's a strategy or something they give you in the article or in the reading? Okay, so you do your first resource there and then the second resource here. So you're going to do both. Okay, after you've done that, then you are going to create a mnemonic. All right, mnemonic is kind of a mouthful there. Mnemonic device that includes at least 3 strategies you learned. So you're going to kind of use these notes that you learned, okay, to help you come up with this mnemonic device, which is really just a play on words, okay? So we learned about helping people confront their own confirmation bias when they read news or encounter information online. A mnemonic device is a word or service of letters that helps us remember steps or strategies. So basically, what are steps or strategies to reducing or correcting confirmation bias? Okay, so they give you an example of Roy G. Biv, and that's to remember colors, red, orange, yellow. So you can see the R is for red, the O is for, so that's just giving you an example. And the function is to remember the color spectrum, okay, from one end of the rainbow to the other, right? Mixing of colors, okay, and stuff. So a way to remember it. So your first step is write down different words or strategies that you could use. Okay, so maybe write down 3 words or 3 different steps, and so what could you turn that into? And then maybe find the abbreviation for it. So then what would be the abbreviation? Okay, so something maybe on, you know, something that would help you remember with more accuracy. Okay, so you're going to review both sources, take notes on them, use those notes to come up with 3 strategies or steps to correcting or reducing confirmation bias. Come up with a mnemonic, you know, kind of choice of words. What could we abbreviate that as? All right. And then finally, what would that break down to? All right. So you have this time to work. It's 9:30. We're in here till 10:20. So you got 50 minutes. All right. So I would finish working on the first worksheet, get that done. And then you've got the 2 resources to review, taking those notes, and then coming up with your bias brain mnemonic play on words. All right. Let me know if you have questions or if I didn't answer anything. Okay. Any questions? Give me a thumb up if you're okay. If you have a question, feel free to unmute or you can put it in the chat and I can help you. So I would finish the first one, okay, the tracking truth, and then confirmation bias, getting those done. All right. I'm going to stop recording just because we don't need to have 50 minutes of us just sitting here and stuff. But yes, if you come across anything as we're sitting here working, you can unmute and let me know or write it in the chat and I can help you or try to clarify. And remember, both these are due this Friday. So this Friday is the 18th. Okay, so both of these are due this Friday.